Hello, everyone. There's Will. Hi, Geordie. How you doing? How's Ohio? Will Schwalbe is connecting to audio and can't hear you yet. And then some wiggly dots.
And here I am.
Hey, there he is.
It took me a second. I was like, ah, there were buttons to press. And we've got chat going on.
Yeah. Oh, there's Janelle. All right. Hi, Janelle.
And then I guess there are people with us. How nice. People are saying, hello, Alex.
Yeah. Oh, there's Ellen. Hi, Ellen. Ellen from Maine. I hope your books got there. I was told that we sent out, we were given permission to send books out early. We sent them out on Friday. And apparently they went to Ohio and then Illinois and then back to Columbia. It's just like, the US Postal Service at its finest.
Oh.
They took a tour.
I love seeing everyone join. It's so fun.
Yeah.
I think we'll, for those of us who are in and listening, we'll give people a minute or two to kind of find their way to us. Is there?
Hi, Penny. This is so much fun. Well, I'm having
cheers.
A beer. So cheers. Yeah.
Just having water, but I'll pretend it's vodka. So. Yeah, it's been an interesting day. I spent 2 hours in the car driving around Columbia delivering books to people. Oh, any of yours?
Yeah, no, they were all mine.
Oh, okay, all right. Oh, delivering your books to people. Okay.
Yes, yeah. Which and it's been wonderful fun. I mean, again, we were talking before about silver linings, and just to drive through these neighborhoods you've never seen before, and to drop off books to people, and it's it's nice. I feel a bit like the Easter Beagle in Peanuts, just delivering books.
Delivering a little, yep. So, all right, we're up to 63 people. That's great.
Right.
Should we, what do you think? Should we start in?
Yeah, let's just go. We'll see.
Okay, so I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, but I assume everyone is here and can hear us. So that's terrific. I am so thrilled that I get to talk to Alex George on the actual publication night of his magnificent new book, The Paris Hours. And I'm going to introduce him and let him do a reading from the book, and then we'll do some conversation, the two of us, and then I'll open it up to Q&A. But before I do that, I just want to read what someone wrote about The Paris Hours. It's a writer that I know very well because, in fact, it's me. And so I think it's incredibly well phrased, but I'll let everyone be the judge of that. What I wrote was, The Paris Hours is the kind of novel I always dream about finding, a completely engrossing story that had me canceling plans. I read The Paris Hours without pausing, desperate to see if these marvelous characters could escape the ache of their past, and I gasped when I got to the end. So I'm so thrilled that we're here, we're in conversation. I will say at the start of this, and I will say it again at the end, this is very difficult times for all of us. More difficult for some than others, but very difficult for the country as a whole. And certainly one of my salvations has been books, and has been, as it always has, the ability to stay home because I have to, and read books that not just engrossed me thoroughly, but taught me more about myself and the world. And if I had one regret, it's that I cannot read The Paris Hours for the first time during this period because I've already read it. But for those of you who haven't, I urge you to do so. You will thank me. You will thank Alex even more. And of course, I urge you to get your copy from your favorite local independent bookseller. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Alex George.
I will. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We had such plans for tonight. Kerry and I spent hours and hours discussing how we were going to set up the shop, where are we going to put the drink, where I was going to stand, and all of these exciting things. And here we are. And it's not quite what we planned, but that's just fine. It is wonderful to be here. I'm so grateful to Will for agreeing to talk with me. And thank you all for tuning in. We find our comfort where we can in these times, and knowing that you are all out there is wonderful. I have cried big ugly tears twice today, but not of frustration or sadness, but of pure happiness from things that people have said and done and posted, and the kindness that has been shown. And I'm so grateful to everybody for those things. And I'm going to really try hard and not do that for a third time, because that would be silly. But I'm going to read a little bit from the book. It's very difficult when you have to select something from a book, because you never know. I'm never quite sure whether this is an art or a science, but it's really difficult to find one piece, one short piece as well, that's sort of representative of the whole. And that's particularly true, I'm discovering, when you write a book with effectively four different stories. And I sort of was deciding, oh goodness, which one am I supposed to choose from? And in the end, I just decided to do one which is different to the one that I read on Thursday at the event that we did then, but it's also about music. And it's at the very beginning of the book. And this is actually how we are introduced to one of the characters. So I will just get going. So the title of the chapter is called Rhapsody, which is a clue. Jean-Paul Maillard closes his eyes and dreams of America. The needle touches the spinning vinyl with the gentlest sigh of static. He listens, spellbound. That clarinet, the first low trill fat with promise, then the solo ascent to the heavens, soaring smoothly through the registers. By the time that ecstatic high note, limpid and beautiful, pours into his ears, Jean-Paul has made his escape. He sweeps through the open window onto the Rue Barbette and hurtles down the cobbled streets of the Marais, streaking westward across the city. In a moment, he is flying over the dark waters of the Atlantic. The music beckons him on. He soars high over the city's skyscrapered silhouette, his for the taking. He hears the rumble of the Harlem-bound A train and the orchestra's propulsive rhythms, low and sweet. He hears new worlds and the piano's blistering arpeggiated attacks. Images streak past like the onrushing traffic, hurtling down the arrow-straight avenues. Perfect lines of shimmying, high-kicking chorus girls, their cherry-red lips glistening in the spotlights. A liveried doorman striding onto the busy street, his hand outstretched for a yellow cab. Elegant matrons pushing through the door at Bergdorf's. Sharp-dressed men with two-tone shoes, hats pulled down low, huddled close on a street corner. When Jean-Paul Maillard dreams of America, he dreams of New York City. But those dazzling syncopations do not last forever. The music ends and the spell is broken. Reluctantly, Jean-Paul opens his eyes. America has retreated, as it always does, and his shabby French apartment remains. He looks around. The place used to be so bright and tidy, so clean, and now every surface is coated with a patina of ancient dust. The wallpaper is staging a slow escape from the walls. A dark brown stain has annexed a corner of the ceiling. The gramophone is still going around. The silence is gently punctuated by the soft, rhythmic bump of the needle against the spinning vinyl, as regular as a tiny heartbeat. He does not get up to switch it off. He likes the sound. Jean-Paul looks at the dim morning light creeping across the apartment window. It's been years since he has slept through the night. In the early hours of every morning, his ruined leg drags him from sleep, and then he sits in his armchair, listens to George Gershwin, and thinks about the lights of Manhattan. I'll end it there.
Wow, it's such a spectacular piece of writing. One of the things that prompts me, and one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is music. This novel has Maurice Ravel. It has the character you just read about. It has Josephine Baker. I'd love to hear you talk about the role that music plays in this novel and in your life, and also find out, do you listen to music when you write?
Okay, well, can I answer that last question first? Because that's super easy. And the answer is no. I desperately wish that I could. But I can't. I've tried many times, but there is just no way, because I'm easily distractible when I write, to the point where suddenly I will fight for the time to write, and then I will sit down and suddenly think, oh, I need to go and vacuum. I just anything actually to avoid doing the work. And music is the sort of perfect example of all of that. And if there's music going on, then I'm too busy listening to the music to actually concentrate on what I'm supposed to be doing, which is telling a story, to the point where when I write, I have a separate desk pointing, but you'll just have to take my word for it over there, where I write, and there is a blank wall in front of me, and there is nothing on the wall. I do not look out of a window. I just need to be absolutely sort of tunnel vision. So no, I don't. I never listen, but I wish I could, because I would get so much listening done if I could do it at the same time. But I just can't, and I've sort of made my peace with that. But music is hugely important to me. I am a very sort of happy amateur when it comes to playing it, but I do listen to it a lot when I can, and I've always tried to put music actually in all of my books in different sort of shapes and forms. I mean, in A Good American, 3 books ago, depending on how you count, there was a ton of it, of all different kinds of American music. And then in Setting Free the Kites, I wanted to do something completely different. So I just did punk, which was something music I knew very little about at the time, although I know slightly more about it now. And it was fun to do with this book, something different again. And there's Rhapsody in Blue, of course. And then at the end, the big finale of the book, Sidney Bechet appears, and he was actually the musician who first inspired my love of jazz. And there's a wonderful poem, which some people may know, by Philip Larkin, which is called For Sidney Bechet. And there's a line in it, see if I can remember it. This is 32 years ago at least. My crescent city is where your speech alone is understood, scattering long-haired grief and scored pity, which is just fabulous. And so when we study this in English, and I thought, well, I'm going to find out who this guy is. And my father actually had some old Blue Note records by Sidney Bechet, which I probably took. I can say this because it's 1 o'clock in the morning in England. I'm fairly sure he's not listening. So I began to listen to them, and that was really where my love affair with jazz began. And I've never written about Bechet until this book. And it was really fun to sort of resurrect him and the joie de vivre that he brought to the stage, and his music is just, you can't help but to tap your feet when you listen to him. And yeah, I've always written about music, partly because, you know, I think it's always a good idea to write about things that you're passionate about, because I think that comes through in the telling. But it's also a challenge. I mean, it's hard to take one medium and sort of translate it into another one. But it's a challenge that I enjoy. And this book in particular, there is a piece that reappears, I think 3 times, certainly twice. And it's the third movement. You mentioned Ravel before, Will. It's the third movement of the Ravel piano trio, which is a piece that I just could listen to all day. It's just incredibly beautiful. And the third piece is called Pasakai, which is depending upon sort of where you look, either a French or Italian term, and it's a particular kind of very slow dance. And although the piece is for a piano trio, I sort of reimagined it in my head as a solo piano piece, and that sort of reappears throughout the book as a leitmotif that sort of comes all the way through. And that was just a lot of fun and I actually use the same words each time, but it's in an entirely different context each time. So that was sort of fun too, because, you know, when you listen to music, it's always different, depending upon where you are. And so I sort of wanted to capture a little bit of that when I was writing about it. Yeah, so yes, I mean, it would be difficult for me to imagine writing a book that didn't have music in it.
Yeah. What about Paris? I mean, that's sort of the obvious question too on this book, The Paris Hours, but it's a book that has a lot of different kinds of artistic expression. There are painters, there's a puppeteer, there's musicians, and at the center of it is the city of Paris. What is your experience with Paris, and what do you think of when you think of Paris?
Oh, well, so my experience of Paris is complicated. I went to school in the outskirts of Paris in a town called Pontoise when I was just 13 years old. And I was there for 3 months at a boarding school. Not the happiest time of my life, it has to be said, but I came away from that time speaking French more or less fluently. You know, at that age, your brain is sponge-like, and so a lot goes in and sort of stays there, which I was very grateful for. And because of that, and that facility that I sort of acquired at that point, more by chance than anything else, fast forward 10 years, and then I was working as an attorney at a big multinational law firm, and they had an office in Paris, and they sent me there because I could speak French. And so I went and would sort of do lawyerly things, but just with a shrug and who knows. And I actually spent a year working in Paris as a lawyer. And so that clearly, that informed a lot of my experiences there. And one of the things that I've learned is that, and you know, speaking as somebody who has lived on 2 different continents and in various different places, is that you can go and you can visit a place and you can visit it as often as you like, but nothing is the same as living there. And it is a different experience. And you know, I know many, many people who live in Paris, and I dare say none of them have ever gone to the Eiffel Tower, for example. You know, it's a different existence than the one that people think. And you know, they think of. I mean, people keep talking about Midnight in Paris, the Woody Allen film, and I mean, I prefer somebody mentioned Audrey Hepburn from time to time, but oh well. But you know, but the Paris in the movies is a very different thing to the Paris that French citizens sort of live in. And one of the challenges of the book was to try and navigate that. I wanted to show a city that maybe people didn't know so well, but I also didn't want it to be so alien that people were going, well, where the hell is this? This might as well be in wherever. So it was a balance to be struck between striking enough chords that resonate with people. They go, oh yes, but also showing them maybe, you know, a slightly different side to the place. And so that was fun to do as well. And you know, one of the things, I mean, the Eiffel Tower is mentioned once or twice, but almost as a I think maybe twice, and both times as a joke. Almost, and sort of it's just dismissed as being the sort of beautiful but completely useless thing, which I think is sort of that is very much how Parisians actually think about it. Yeah, so it was a challenge, and again, just avoiding those cliches as well was well, it wasn't hard, but it was something that I had to think about.
Yeah. I love how I mean, the weaving of history and your imagination is always marvelous to watch. I lost the better part of a couple of hours Googling the nightclub where Josephine Baker performed, only to find out that it's a complete invention of yours.
Yes, sorry. Yes. Yeah, no, I totally made that up. I mean, there were nightclubs where she used to go. You know, and it's always with these things, it's a real balance between how much truth you want to tell and how many facts you actually want to put in there. And this was actually the housebound unbound discussion that we had on Thursday was about that. With Whitney Scherer and Meg Wade Clayton, you know, both of whom have written these wonderful novels and the main protagonist is a real person. So they had a lot more work to do than I did. I was well, throw them in there, nobody really cares. But they had to do a lot more research. And yeah, it is always that question about, well, how far do you want to go? And I don't know why. I know it was a little well, not quite capricious, but there was no real guiding principle behind any of it. You know, there were some things I thought, well, I'm just going to make this bit up, and other bits I thought, well, I'm going to hew more closely to the established record, but I couldn't tell you why in any particular instance. I mean, I was just trying to tell the best story that I could, which I think that's my job.
Now, it's of course, it's not just Paris, it's Paris at a very specific time. And one of the things that interests me is it's a Paris that was home to expatriates. And you have a character who's an Armenian, and you have an American, and you have all of these people. You're an expatriate yourself.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the life of the expatriate and how it resonated for you in writing this particular book?
That's interesting. I mean, there were lots of Americans, as you say, there are lots of Americans in the book. I didn't particularly consciously associate myself with them in that, oh yes, no, I was an Englishman and I was working in Paris, therefore we're sort of, you know, me and Ernest Hemingway or the same. I didn't really think about it in those terms, certainly unlike with A Good American, where, you know, that was an immigrant story and I am an immigrant. So it informed it a lot more. Yeah, I mean, in terms of my personal experience, it didn't really impact the story that I was telling. But of course, I mean, Hemingway, of course, wrote A Movable Feast, and there's such incredible stories and such richness to those Americans who came over, and they all came over for different reasons. And you know, in a way, the story almost wrote itself in those little bits of it where these more famous people, and they are on the periphery, but sort of when they came onto the page, it was as I could almost sit back and just let them get on with it.
Now, one of the things you did not make up, of course, is a marvelous bookstore. And Shakespeare and Company makes a cameo appearance in this book, and you describe the tables piled high with books. And the kind of key encounters that take place in a bookstore. I want to get back to the novel, but I want to pivot for a second and talk about the role of the bookstore in this novel and your new life. You call yourself a triple threat, festival organizer, author, and bookseller. Your new life as a bookseller.
It's the best thing. It is the best thing. It makes me so happy. I dare say that quite a lot of the people watching have been into Skylark. Hope they have. And it's a beautiful space to exist in. The people who I work with, I just adore, and they're wonderful. And just being surrounded by books is astonishing. My son was having lunch with me today. It's his birthday today, by the way. He's 19. He may be downstairs watching. I don't know, but if you are, Helen, happy birthday, mate. I'll see
happy
you
birthday.
Yeah, I'm cooking him eggplant risotto tonight. So when I'm done here, I got to go and just slave over a hot stove. And we were talking, and he was sort of looking over my shoulder at the books behind me. Oh yeah, he's there. Love you, Pops. Thanks, Helen. And it's just, and every, you know, we have these conversations, and I've done some other Zoom chats and things from there, and I did one yesterday, and the interviewer was going, oh, I see you've got that Anne Fadiman book, and I would turn around and we'd suddenly start talking about Ex Libris, and it's an ongoing and never-ending conversation about books. I mean, I don't need to tell you, Will, of all people, it's just the best thing, and it brings me so much joy. And and all I can wonder is why I didn't think to do it before.
Oh, I have a confession to make, which is I'm vastly relieved to hear you say that, because I had the joy of being at your house
That's right.
for dinner. And you and Alex took me aside after and said you were thinking of this. And I said I thought it was a marvelous idea. And then I thought, oh God, I've ruined his life.
Well, I think I said to you, if this all goes well, I'm taking all the credit, but if it goes badly, you're getting all the blame. So
Exactly. So now I want to pivot back to the book for a second. And don't worry, everybody, no spoilers. But the theme of burning books and of authors who destroy their own work, not burning books in the Nazi sense, but the author who destroys her or his work. Mm-hmm. I'd love to, that obviously obsesses you. I'd love to hear about that.
Yes, it does. And I've actually written a piece for LitHub about this, which is going to be coming out in about a week or so. So when we watched the new film of Little Women, Alex said that I was sort of shuddering in my chair when Jo March's manuscript was burnt in the grate. And there is something so, to me, sort of terrifyingly elemental about destruction by fire, which nothing compares to it. So you can shred something, and in theory you could put it back together. You could throw it away. You could recycle it. Anything else, you could even like sort of erase something on a computer, and it's probably still in the cloud somewhere. But the idea of burning a thing so that literally all you have left is ash is just always has just struck me as being, I'm somebody who, if I write half a sentence, I'll hit Control S and save the thing. So it's like the idea of burning anything is terrifying to me, not because I think I necessarily, and it's worth preserving, but I just like I sweated over that. I just want to keep it. I don't want to. So I have behind me the entire piles of drafts of old manuscripts that I'm never going to look at, but I'm not quite sure what to do with them. I just don't want to get rid of them. And so, yeah, it has always been something of an obsession. And when I read in the memoir of Proust's maid, his actual maid, Celeste Albaret, that she had been asked to burn his notebooks, just this shudder went through me. And you know, these I think there were 32 or 36 notebooks that had the bones of In Search of Lost Time in it, and you just have to wonder what was lost in those books and what treasures were lost. And so, you know, as writers, you know, we're all magpies. We're always looking for the next shiny thing and sort of, where am I going to get my next idea from? And I just thought, well, that's something that, you know, it's worth investigating. And it's interesting. I mean, I do think that burning by fire is also interesting because you think about Gogol, who burnt the second book of Dead Souls just before he died. And, you know, unfortunately for him, he's probably more famous for doing that than he is for writing the first one. And so it can be, you know, people burn books because they're worried about their legacy. You know, it doesn't always work out for the best.
No.
And there's another story about Nabokov, who wrote, well, he didn't. There were like 128 postcards that he had written on before he died. I can't remember the name of the book, but he said to his wife, "When I'm gone, you burn those suckers because I don't want anyone to see them." And she didn't. And they sat in a bank vault in Geneva for I don't know how many years. And then his son, who I think probably had some financial trouble, then had them published. And you know, I mean, Nabokov, nothing really was going to tarnish his legacy at that point, but it did not end well. So, you know, so either way, it's a thorny issue, but yeah, it's so I was writing this piece for LitHub, and I was talking to Kerry, who is an enthusiastic. I hope it's okay if I say this, Kerry. I think you're right this one. Enthusiastic burner of her own work, and she said, "You should try it. You should try it." So I got the Weber out. Oh, there
She
she
wrote,
is.
yay burning, fire is better.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, all good, all good. And so I got the Weber out and tried to barbecue one of my drafts of one of the books, and it's actually really hard to burn a book, unless I guess you already have an inferno going and you can just throw it on. But if you're starting from scratch, it takes a long time. And there was one moment where I had all this fire, and it was going quite well, and so I sort of put chapters 5, 6, and 7 all on at once. And this is a metaphor, just bursting with promise, and it put the fire out completely.
Fantastic. You're a douser, not a burner. There is that story. Is it Carlyle whose sort of magnum opus History of the World was chucked into the fire by the housekeeper? Do you know that story?
Oh, I don't know that one.
Anybody online knows whether I'm making that up or not? Well, let's see. Yes. So Proust obviously cast a big shadow over this. Have you read Proust?
Oh God, no. Okay, so it's 7:31 on the day of publication, and you are actually the first person to ask me that question. So, well done, thank you. Did you say, have I read the whole of Proust?
No, any whatsoever.
Oh, anyway, okay. No, I have read. I mean, I've read the first one, and I read Lydia Davis's translation, which was wonderful. And I will at some point read some more. I enjoyed it enormously. I wasn't ready for how funny some of it was, but it was. Yeah, I adored it, and I kind of think that I don't know. I mean, I've read more biographies of Proust at this point than I have actual words that he wrote, and I've read various collections of letters and things. Oh God, he was a tedious man sometimes. Just that he used to write letters to his upstairs neighbor, and you just, I don't know, it wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have done well if he'd been beneath me. Difficult man. In many ways, but obviously, a genius beyond compare. And it was a little scary to write about him. I hope I did it with due respect, because it's certainly due, but also to show his sort of peccadillos and his sort of quirkiness. But what I really was hoping for was to get his kindness, because he was very screwed up in a number of ways, but he was an incredibly kind man. And when you read this this memoir that Celeste Albaret wrote, which is just called Monsieur Proust, and she wrote it in the 1970s, I think. I mean, she was at the very end of her life, and for 50 years, and the French, they revere their writers, like, except maybe the Irish, no other country. And she spent decades and decades going, I'm not going to talk to you, and just being incredibly, just unbelievably loyal and discreet. And I don't quite know why she decided to write this book, but I'm really, really glad she did, because it's such it's a wonderful. You should all go and read it. It's been republished by the New York Review of Books, and it's a and their books are all lovely anyway. But it's a wonderfully touching portrait of these two people who just couldn't be more different, and they find this wonderfully warm common ground, and it's all based in kindness, and trust, and it's gorgeous. And of course, so in wades the novelist and sort of rips all that apart and tells an entirely different story. But oh well, sorry. So it's a. But no, it was and Proust is a bit like Paris in a way, in that everybody has their idea about what Proust is like, and they think of the sort of comedy moustache and the moon-like face. But there was so much more to him. He's such, and there have been some one of the things I think about, once in a lifetime, once in a generation talent like his is that. In addition to writing these extraordinary words, he also inspired incredible scholarship as well. And some of the biographies of him And some of them are sort of 900 pages thick, and then there are others that are 150 pages. And Edmund White wrote one which was just unbelievable, just unbelievably good. And so he actually inspires more, wonderful, wonderful writing. And yeah, he's but yeah, you do have to, again, there's a balance to be struck between representing him with respect and honoring what he did, but also telling a story that works as well. And it's a tricky one, but I don't know, hopefully I managed it okay.
He's a marvelous spirit who runs through the book. And to contrast that relationship too, there's a lot of very horrors in this book, the horrors of World War I, the horrors of genocide. I see that we have our first question in the Q&A button. So I'm going to see what happens when I click it. But before I do, I've actually never read a word of Proust, so I put you unfairly on the spot. All right, here we go. Let's see what happens when I press this button. BB Praval wants to know, why are you so adorable? Why are you so adorable? She writes, I love listening to your voice. It soothes me during these wonky times.
Oh, well, it's, do I really have to answer that question?
Yes, you do. I insist.
BB, honestly, put me on the spot. I don't know. It's my wife. She brings out the best in me. There you are. BB is Alex's best friend. So
okay. All right. That's what we call a ringer, but very, very nice to have nonetheless. I mentioned, I just fessed up. Actually, I had pretended to have read Anna Karenina, but never actually had. So that was one of my quarantine reading projects. Any incredibly famous book you've never read that you haven't, that you might tackle?
Oh, I heard them shout from downstairs. There are so many, and people will be appalled. Probably the most, they're yelling at me. The most egregious one is To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh my goodness!
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I've heard it's very good.
Okay.
But this is growing up in England. In my defense,
yes, you're right. You're right.
It simply wasn't a thing that was required reading in the same way that it is over here. So, and yes, I mean, my daughter's read it 4 times, I think. So, yes, it's a source of constant shame and mockery in this house. But I also, I really shouldn't be admitting any of this, but I haven't read any Mark Twain either. And being in Missouri, it's particularly
wow. All right.
terrible. Yeah, I'm going to stop there. But
okay.
yeah,
I know a good local bookstore in Columbia. If you need copies of either, I do. I can direct you there. Carrie, I think, can get a copy at the register. So I'm going to ask you 2 other questions which have come in. And I'll ask them to you at the same time because they're somewhat related. What and who inspired you to write the book? And are you going to write a sequel because it ended on a cliffhanger, says our correspondence.
Okay, so no, I'm not going to write a sequel. I did think about writing another book in the similar vein in 20 years' time, but then decided not to do that. I'm always impressed by authors who do write sequels or who write series of books with the same characters coming back again and again. And I love those books, whether it's Louise Penny or Ian Rankin or wonderful English writer called Patrick Gale, that all the books are separate, but you see these tiny little echoes of previous characters there's this inhabited universe. I guess a bit like, Lucy Barton. What's her name? We all know. No, they're not yelling now.
Elizabeth Strout says our comment. Thank you,
Megan.
Thank
yes. Oh, good. It's been a long day, Megan. Thank you. Yeah, and I know that with there's sort of characters sort of pop in from other books. I love it when it happens. I've never been fond enough of any of my characters to resurrect them for a second go around. But also with that ending, and it's been very interesting to watch people respond to it. And because the book was chosen as a Book of the Month Club for April, lots and lots of people have read it already, which has been fun. And for the most part, I think it's fair to say that people like the ending, but some people did not. Let's just put it that way. They wanted, I don't want to spoil it, but they wanted clear resolution, which is not what you get. So yeah, but I didn't do it thinking, aha, I can write another one. It just felt right to me. It just felt that that was in the spirit of the book as a whole. And I wanted the reader to draw their own conclusions and to do a bit of work, actually, and to think for themselves, maybe, well, what would happen. And there are no right or wrong answers, of course. And I dare say at one point, if I had been gone on tour, somebody would have said, well, what happened next? And the answer would have been, I don't know, you can choose.
Well, I think I know. As I said, I gasped when I got to the end. So I have my theory.
Yeah. And as for what inspired it, I began thinking about, Paris in the 1920s sort of inspired the whole thing. And I began thinking about that one night, years and years ago, when I was listening to NPR. I was driving somewhere, and there was Ravel playing on the NPR station, and then at the end, the announcer was talking about Serge Diaghilev, who had, excuse me, used all of these incredible people to sort of help him put together the Ballet Russe. And so people like Coco Chanel would design the costumes, and Marc Chagall would paint the backdrops, and Stravinsky would do the music, and Jean Cocteau would write a libretto. It was madness, the amount of talent he had at his disposal. And I thought that was what this book was going to be about, and it was going to be about Diaghilev. And I read a great big fat biography of him, and but then I finally realized that these people didn't actually need me to tell their story. They've done perfectly well on their own. Thank you very much. They didn't really need another voice. And so I sort of redrew the focus. So I still wanted to stay in Paris in that time, but I redrew the focus away from those sorts of people to these four, for want of a better word, ordinary characters. And I'm by nature, I'm drawn to quieter stories, and that was how I got there.
Look at all these marvelous questions. The question, this one, do you like to read in the same genre you write? And wanted to know some of your favorite authors or current favorite reads, and I'll combine that with a question of what you're reading during quarantine.
I'm reading a ton, actually, although right now a little less so, just because there's so much going on. I am, being the owner of a bookshop, that's kind of my job now, is to read a lot, although I'm very bad owner of a bookshop, because what I should be doing is reading all of the galleys that come in about things that are coming out in 6 months' time. I'm still playing catch up. So I'm reading stuff that's out now. And, I'm a mug because I'm actually buying it, so I haven't got this thing down at all, but hopefully I will one day. But I'm trying to read at any one time, one novel, one nonfiction, and one poetry. And right now, because I happen to have it here, I am reading Homie by Danez Smith, which is brilliant and heartbreaking and wonderful. But I read poetry incredibly slowly, and I go back and back and back again. I'm also reading, the novel that I'm reading at the moment is Mostly Dead. Is this all back to front? Am I all sort of?
No, I can see it, I think.
Okay. Mostly Dead Things by Kristen Arnett, which is weird. It's fantastic, but it's a family of taxidermists in Florida. It's absolutely brilliant. And then the other book, which I don't have up here, is called, I think it's called How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell, which is just off the charts brilliant and smart. And I mean, couldn't be more appropriate for this time when we're all spending even more time on the internet than we were before. And it's a really, really thoughtful manifesto, for want of a better word, about just a proposal, a modest proposal for a different way of going about things and how to engage. I'm about halfway through it, and just, I mean, I just have a pencil with me all the time, and just I'm forever underlining things and irritating Alex afterwards when I say, hey, let me tell you about this, because this is really good. So yeah, so that's what I'm reading at the moment.
So I'm sure people have strong, you're an underliner? Are you a dog earer or just underliner?
Oh, I'm both. I'm both. I mean, I treat my books incredibly badly. Well, we were talking about Anne Fadiman before. I mentioned her book, and there's a story in that book of, I think, one of her siblings or family members who left a book in a hotel room, and it was like dogged, and there were lines, and it was and then the maid actually left a note by the book saying, "You should not treat your books this way."
Oh. Fabulous.
Defender of books. I love it.
We have so many wonderful questions. This one is a little bit, would be a spoiler. You'll have to talk about it cryptically, but someone wants to know if you know the content of the chapter Camille saved. Like, maybe you know that one, so you'll have to.
Well, I mean, there's no is the answer, except for one. There's one piece that is sort of referenced at the end, but I don't know what else is in there. No.
Okay. I'm going to bounce around a little. One of the attendees wanted to know and expressed gratitude for this, about how you decided to include an Armenian character and reference the genocide.
So yeah, and I've been asked that question a lot, and I have a very good friend who lives in London called Rafi Varugian, which is possibly the most Armenian name on the planet. And he was actually my trainee. We're both attorneys, and he would sit in my room, and I trained him for 6 months. We both had a slightly unhealthy passion for Arsenal Football Club. And so we would go and watch these soccer games in North London every other weekend. And we would meet up beforehand, have a pint, and then go to the games. And a strong and lasting friendship. I'm very fond of him. And he would tell me about the campaigns. And this was back in the late 90s, I guess. The campaign that is still ongoing to have the monstrosities that happened in 1915 in Armenia recognized as a genocide. And it's just a thing. I mean, I talked before about novelists being magpies, and it was just a thing that I never forgot. And just when I was thinking about this book, and when I had reconceived of it as these 4 stories, the timing was right, and everything just seemed to work. And so I thought, well, let's see if that flies. And one of the privileges that we have as writers is to shine a little light on things that perhaps are not well known, and certainly that was an opportunity to do that.
Mm. I think that ties in beautifully to another question someone asked, which is about the epigraph, the quote at the start of the book, which is a James Baldwin from Sonny's Blues. Mm-hmm. For while the tale of how we suffer and how we are delighted and how we may triumph is never new, it always must be heard. There isn't any other tale to tell. It's the only light we've got in all of this darkness, James Baldwin. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I almost sort of feel it doesn't need, it's like, it's so perfect. It just exists. I mean, when I read it, I mean, I don't remember the first time I read that story, but I read it again fairly recently. And I just thought, oh my goodness, that's what I'm trying to do here. Telling these 4 smaller stories. And just because the protagonists of those stories, I mean, I made 3 of them up, or I made all 4 of them up, really. But they're fictional as opposed to real. But that doesn't mean that they don't have stories that are worth telling, and we all do. And the Baldwin quote just brought it home with such power and beauty and economy. And I couldn't get it out of my head. And I just thought, well, that's it. That's it. You know, I don't know that I've ever actually had an epigraph before in any of my books, but you know, but I think the reason for that is because I've never found the right one. But you know, when you do find the right one, it's a fine thing. Yeah, and they're just beautiful words.
Here's a question from Emmy Yoder, who says, I have read the book and loved it. Just curious about two things: the 24-hour structure and how you decided on that structure, and the concept of people coming to terms with their past, which resonated with me as I age. Do you find, as you grow older, that you too grapple with that?
Well, yes. So the structure, the first question about the 24 hours, you know, a lot of people have said, well, why did you do that? And that was a question that I asked myself incessantly while I was writing the thing, because it was, I don't remember why I thought that would ever be a good idea. But I sort of landed on it, and then stubborn as I am, refused to budge away from it. And it was a real challenge, because in addition to working within that 24-hour structure, those of you who've read the book will know that the four stories are told in strictly rotating chapters. And so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But so I had to follow the internal structure of the chapter swapping or chapter following, but then the chronology of the day had to flow over and above all of that, which was very hard to do. And it meant that if you changed one thing, then sort of like dominoes, everything would sort of fall apart, and you suddenly noticed that there was a glitch in the space-time continuum on page 172 because something had happened, and oh no, this happened sort of 2 hours previously. So it required a lot of rereading, a lot of sort of thought, but it was, you know, it was a challenge. And I do think that when you set yourself these sort of formal restrictions, no matter how arbitrary they may be, it changes the way that you write in interesting ways. And being forced, you know, to sort of stick to my own rules meant that I had to do things that maybe I wouldn't have done otherwise. And a lot of people have sort of commented on how short the book is. That's like, not that, you know, I mean, there is one book by some guy who lived in Paris, which was quite long, and it took place over the course of one day. So, but anyway, so that was, so I don't unfortunately I don't remember exactly why I chose to do it that way, but I'm glad I did. I mean, I'm not going to do it again, but it was fun. And as for the other question about the past, yeah, I mean, I just turned 50, and inevitably, as you get older and as your children get older, you spend more time looking back. I guess it's because there's more to look back on. And, you know, I think actually, and sorry to embarrass you, but I think of all of the wonderful things that have been said about this book, Will, you actually, when you wrote about these marvelous characters could escape the ache of their past, I mean, that it was perfect what you wrote. And I was thrilled to read it, because that's exactly it. That is exactly it. That is what they are doing. They are all, I mean, we all come with baggage, and we all deal with it in different ways, and we live with it in different ways. And they all struggle in their own way to really, and I mean, to come to terms with it, and also they're almost, I mean, they're all looking for something that they have lost in the past. And, you know, not to go back to Proust too often, but, you know, the title, you know, In Search of Lost Time, I mean, it could be taken as an overarching theme of the book in a way, that they're all of these four main characters are looking back into the past, trying to get something. And yeah, I don't know whether that's a function of age or just something else, but I dare say we all look back and think, maybe could have done something a bit different at some point.
It's a marvelous thing. They are, you introduce us to people who are damaged by life and circumstance, and then reveal to us how and why. And I do want to point out, one of our attendees pointed out that the 24-hour structure is an Aristotelian idea from the Poetics. So bravo you.
By any chance?
That's Jordi Alonso who pointed that out.
I thought it might be.
Someone wanted to know, and this is as a fellow attorney, Brendan McGregor asked, whether your legal career has impacted your writing either stylistically or in terms of content.
No, at least I hope not. No, I mean, the being an attorney is, and being a writer, and apart from the fact that people go, oh, so you're the new John Grisham, once you get over that hump, it's interesting because both jobs, of course, require entirely dependence on words, but in entirely different ways. When I write my legal documents, and I don't go to court, I don't litigate, I just draft incredibly long and boring things. The job is to keep those documents out of court. So so the aim, very, very specifically and precisely, is to avoid any ambiguity whatsoever. And so what that means is that when you have complex ideas of trust law and these sorts of things, which is what I do, if anyone's, have they all gone? No, there's someone still here. The whole point is that you need to eliminate all doubt, and therefore what that means is that the prose is pretty turgid. I mean, I often joke to my clients, I say, I send them these drafts of their revocable trust, and I say, this is an excellent cure for insomnia. It will send you straight to sleep. Whereas when I'm telling stories, it's the opposite. I mean, I want to conjure up images. I want to leave things unspoken. I want to let the imagination have a role, which is that's the antithesis of a legal document. You want it to be the opposite of that. And it's quite possible, I suppose, that being able to do one allows you better to do the other, just because in the absence of knowing what you don't want to do, if that makes sense. So so in that respect, one probably informs the other. But yeah, it's very, very different for sure. But it's nice to be able to do both.
To a different genre entirely. Someone in the comments and the chat wants to know movies. Is there a plan for a movie of this book?
In my head, there is. I mean, not yet. It would be lovely to imagine it, but it is not a thing that I have spent more than 5 minutes thinking about. I would be thrilled if it happened. The relationship between books and movies is always very interesting to me. As a writer, I mean, there are two things that would interest me specifically. One of which would be, and this is going to maybe sound strange, but if a movie is made of your book, then that probably means that more people are going to read the book, and that would make me happy. Just as a way of like the best marketing tool ever, that would be good, because then more people would hopefully go back to the book. That being said, there is, I think, enormous risks involved with that kind of thing, because you give your baby up and someone is going to take it and someone's going to turn it into something entirely different. John Irving wrote a really interesting book called My Movie Business, about how various people took various of his novels and turned them into books, which, if you're interested in that kind of thing, read that book. It's really, really interesting. And I just find it very interesting, even just with audiobooks, that, and I know that you didn't read your, because I listened to both of your books on audio, and he's a friend of yours, wasn't it? Who
yes, who's a professional audio reader, and I was thrilled that he was me. Yeah,
and he did a wonderful job. But I don't know what you felt, but when I listened to the audio, even though there is no discretion in terms of the words on the page. Like you got to read what's there, but there is enormous license still, and so much interpretation goes on in terms of where do you stop, where do you emphasize, what speed do you go, where do you, all of these things. And so even when you are working within the confines of the written word, there's an enormous amount of discretion and artistic interpretation that's there. So multiply that by a million when it comes to taking it and putting it into a film. So I would be, I think I'd be super excited, and of course I'd be thrilled by it. But I think I would also be nervous too, just to see what they did. I know that some people. I'm thinking about The Help, and I know that the person who adapted The Help was actually a friend of Catherine Stockett, and sort of worked quite closely with her on that. But by and large, I don't think that's the way it works at all. And you get a check. And I mean, of course, the other thing is that just because some of the options you work for a film, that doesn't mean much really. It may very well not be made. But I think that you have to be ready just to like kiss it goodbye and just sort of embrace the spirit of the thing. And well, it's going to be someone else's interpretation of the work, and that would be fine. I think I could just about live with it.
It's funny what you say about audio. What I loved about having this wonderful audio reader read my books is I would listen to it, not all of it, but some of it, and I would think, that's what I meant. So I thought that was very. So we're going to end with a couple of process questions, which there's one that we'll talk about quickly, which is someone kindly asked, do you design your book covers?
That's obviously somebody who's never met me. No, I don't. No. So what I would say about the covers is that, so this is the first book that I've published with Macmillan. And it's been really interesting to have a different process. The last two books are published by Penguin. And one of the things that Macmillan do, they take their covers very, very seriously. And I actually got a 5-page questionnaire just about the cover. And they found all of my old covers, and they asked me to comment on them and sort of what I liked and what I didn't like. And then it was sort of, what books at the moment do you look at and you think, oh yeah, that's nice. So basically just trying to take the measure of where I was with all of this. And so, I was a new author with Macmillan, so I did my job and sort of filled it in. And but really all I wanted to say was, please, I don't care what you do, just don't put the Eiffel Tower on the cover, was really all I wanted to say. And they didn't. It's
a beautiful cover. It's just gorgeous.
The cover is amazing, and it's always exciting. It's probably not quite the right word, but when you get the email from your editor with the cover, and it says on it, cover design ! In the and then it's, and I've got these emails from English editors and US editors, and it's always like, dear Alex, well, we're excited. We've gone back and forth. Everybody loves it. And here it is. We hope you love it too. Can't wait to hear. And then at the bottom of the screen, there's a little JPEG just glowing with sort of sinister malice. And the last time this happened, I was actually in the car with Hallam, my son, and we were driving to Boston. And we had just got on to, we'd spent the night in Cleveland. This is more information than anybody needs, but oh well. We'd spent the night we'd done like 12 hours the first day. We were just outside Cleveland, and we were driving to Boston the next day. We had just had lunch. We were on, is it I-90 that goes like all the way across?
I-95?
Anyway, we basically had like 4 hours, no stopping, all the way through to Massachusetts. And about 10 minutes after we took off, this email came in from Amy, my editor, going with the whole, dear Alex, well, blah, 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 blah. And I just, for 3.5 hours, I was driving and was looking at the phone going, I'm not going to click. I can't be driving when I do that. So I just stared at the phone for 3.5 hours, like this, eyeing it. So we eventually, and we parked, and we went to my mother-in-law's house, who lives in Western Massachusetts. Came out of the car, and my wife was there, and the dog was there, and it was great. And so we walked in, and so we sat around the kitchen table, and then I hit the button on the phone, and this is what came up. I mean, we haven't
So
changed
gorgeous.
a thing. It is as it came out that first time, which is just a miracle. And so, you know, and I have, as all authors do, I have horror stories too about when it didn't go quite so well. But this one is wonderful, and I love the fact that it is. I mean, you know, going back to what we were talking about a while ago about Paris and the sort of the almost sort of overbearing iconography that is there, and it would have been so easy to do the Eiffel Tower, or just, you know, a cafe with a cup of coffee and a thing, and they didn't do any of that, and they really moved well away, and it's an interior thing, which I like, because the book feels to me like an interior book, and so I just adore it. Yeah.
Well, the comment thread is ecstatic too. People love the cover, the color green, everything. So I'm going to end by packaging two questions together because they're related. One is, when you write alternating point of view, do you write one person's story at a time and then put them together, or do you write according to structure? And the other question is from David Collins. After submitting your book, you spoke of spending months rewriting it. What changes did you make during that period?
So, hi, David, by the way. David, by the way, has compiled this incredible two lists, actually, of books set in Paris, one fiction and one non-fiction. And they are long, long lists. There are so many books. It's extraordinary. Anyway, so when it comes to writing, yeah, no, I did not write the book in the order that it appears. That would have required an enormous brain, which I do not possess. I wrote one character, and I would do 5 or 6 chapters at a time in a chunk, and then do the next, and then do the next, and then do the next. And then I would literally shuffle them together, and then start again and do the next chunk, and do the next chunk, and do the next chunk. When I was rewriting, I would actually pull everything out again. So I would do an entire character at a time, because the voice is a little bit different, and it was easier to do it that way. Yeah, and then at the end you shuffle everything back together again, which, as I was sort of intimating before, that can be incredibly complicated, and can sort of mess with your head a little bit, because you suddenly go, oh yeah, no, that's not going to work, and then you have to work out how to fix it. As for the question about the rewrite, I mean, well, you know Amy, of course, well. Amy is sort of notorious for, she really is an editor who edits, and she really does edit. You know, some people these days just acquire and publish, but she really gets her hands dirty, and she really works with her authors to make the book the best book it can possibly be. And we work together on all 3 books that have been published in the US, and they are all infinitely better because of her influence. She's wonderful. And we sold the book to her decades ago, but it was a long time ago. And we met up in Memphis at a bookseller conference that we were both at, wearing other hats. And we spent about 3 hours together talking about various things. And you know, Amy is very sort of honest about what she likes and what she doesn't like. Well, she said, well, I didn't love, which is sort of, you know, publishing speak for, well, I hated this. And so there were sort of certain things that she wanted to change. And then we were getting towards the end, and then she said, well, and what about X? And I'm just going to leave it at that, because I can't. And I thought, oh, that's funny. She's muddled those stories up. And I said, no, that's wrong. And she said, no, I meant what I said. And I thought about it, and I sort of thought, interesting. And so the ending came very, very late on in the process. and of course then required an enormous amount of rewriting and rewriting within this very complex structure as well. So it was very hard to do. But when you have an editor like Amy Einhorn at your back, it's significantly easier. And you know, she's brilliant. And
yes, indeed.
I feel incredibly lucky to have worked with her 3 times now.
Fabulous editor. Well, Alex, this has been such a joy for me. And thank you everyone who joined us. Please, if you haven't already gotten this book, again, buy a copy from your favorite local indie. Skylark has copies, I know, to send all over the country. And I'll leave, as I should, the last word with you. What would you like to say to everybody?
I miss you all. It's been such a funny time. I said to Will before we began, you know, everyone's in the market for silver linings, and one of the silver linings of this pandemic is that I actually got to spend the night of this launch speaking with him, which otherwise probably wouldn't have happened. And thank you all so much for tuning in, if that's the right expression. Thank you, Will. It's such a privilege to be in a position to tell these stories, and I'm just so grateful to everybody for your support. And yeah, thank you all. It's been a joy, and I will see you at some. We'll all see each other. We'll all get together at Skylark, and we will have a big party at some point, but only when the mayor says that we're allowed to do so. But thank you, and stay safe, and keep reading, and wash your hands.
Stay well, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.